Allergic to air, the Vesper Logs. Prologue, Recovery Notice. The following audio transcript was reconstructed from a drifting emergency beacon recovered beyond the Kuiper ship lanes. The beacon belonged to the long-range salvage cutter Vesper, Registry K116A, listed as missing with crew after departing Callisto. If you are listening to this, you are hearing the last coherent record of the Vesper's crew. And if you think the vacuum is the cruelest way to die out here, you haven't met the air. Log 1, take a breath. There's a lie we all grow up with. We tell children that air is free, that the universe gives it to you by default, like gravity and sunrise and the right to keep living. We build cities under domes, we pressurize tin cans and call them ships, and we forget that every breath is a payment. On the Vesper, we were so used to paying we stopped noticing the price. I'm Dr. Elias Huxley, mission medic and, if the ship's official title matters, biological safety officer. It's a joke, a cosmic one. They put the man with the syringes in charge of safety and send him to kiss dead ships. We left Callisto with 5 souls and 1 hungry engine. Captain Mara Klein, the kind of woman who could stare down a reactor leak and make it apologize. Sierra Ven, navigation, quiet eyes, loud brain. Toma Reger, engineer, grease under his nails and a laugh like a wrench hitting metal. Jin Park, pilot and security, trained to expect bullets, not ghosts. And me. Our contract was a simple salvage run. Locate the colony ship PRAXIDIKE, missing 7 months, cut her transponder, tow what we could and leave the rest to the dark. PRAXIDIKE drifted on the edge of the Persephone corridor, like a corpse that hadn't decided whether to sink. Her lights were off, her comms were dead, her hull carried frost in patterns that looked intentional, like fingertips had dragged across it. We approached in suits. We always approach dead ships in suits. Jin said, "Smells like money." Toma snorted, "Smells like a lawsuit." Captain Klein didn't laugh. She watched the colony ship through the forward glass as if it could see back. "Do your checks," she said. "No heroics." No heroics, that was her religion. We cycled through the airlock and floated into PRAXIDIKE's shadow. The colony ship's skin was scarred where micrometeorites had kissed it. In the scars, something dark had grown, like soot embedded in ice. My suit's external sensors tasted the airless hull and reported nothing unusual. Nothing unusual. I will come to hate those words. Inside PRAXIDIKE, the corridors were a museum of halted motion. A child's plastic toy drifted near a handrail. A spoon rotated slowly above a table, as if someone had just set it down and forgotten how to finish the gesture. We found the first body in the hydroponics module. Or rather, we found a suit. An EVA suit, upright, hands raised like it was surrendering. The visor was fogged from the inside, but the suit's life support was dead. Jin tapped the helmet with a gloved knuckle. The fog didn't move. Toma murmured, "Where's the person?" The suit was empty, not ripped, not torn, empty the way a snake's shedskin is empty. Sierra drifted closer, her suit lamp painting trembling circles on the walls. "That's impossible." In my headset, my own breath sounded too loud. I checked PRAXIDIKE's environmental systems. The ship still held pressure barely. The air was thin, cold, and old, but it was air. Captain Klein's voice came through comms, calm as always. "Huxley, any biohazards?" I should have said yes. Instead I said, "Unknown, no active readings." Because the ship's sensors weren't screaming. Because my suit didn't detect toxins. Because I wanted to believe in the simple universe where danger has a label. We pushed deeper. In the central habitat ring, we found dozens more suits, some slumped in corners, some strapped into chairs, some clustered together like a prayer circle. All empty. The only thing inside any of them was a dusting of black grit, fine as ash, clinging to the inner fabric. It floated when disturbed, then settled again, stubborn, as if it had learned the shape of human absence. Toma joked that the colonists had gone on a diet. No one laughed. Captain Klein ordered samples. I collected a pinch of the black grit into a sealed vial. It glimmered under my suit lamp, not shiny, not metallic, just eager, like it wanted attention. We returned to the Vesper with our prize: data cores, a few intact instruments, and the question that sat in my throat like a swallowed nail. Back on our ship, we cycled through decontamination, peeled off our helmets, and took the first breath of home. The air of the Vesper was warm, recycled, faintly smelling of plastic and coffee. The air I'd trusted for 3 years. I remember thinking, absurdly, that it tasted sweeter after EVA. And then my tongue started to itch. At first I thought it was stress, or the dryness of suit air. Then my lips tingled. Then my throat tightened like a fist. Jin coughed once sharp, a duck. Toma tried to say something, but his voice cracked. He grabbed at his neck with raw hands. Sierra's eyes went wide. She made a sound like someone trying to breathe through wet cloth. Captain Klein stood rigid. Her face flushed, blotchy, as if invisible hands were slapping her. In the med bay, alarms flared as my own pulse climbed. My airway felt smaller with every second. Hives rose on my arms like angry continents. Anaphylaxis. All of us. To what? To air. We dove for emergency respirators, masks connected to compressed oxygen. I slammed my face into mine and sucked. Cold oxygen flooded my lungs. Relief struck so hard my knees almost buckled. Around me, the others did the same, panting, wide-eyed, stunned. Captain Klein's voice came through the mask, distorted. Huxley, explain. I stared at the air quality readouts above the med bay door. O2 21% N2, 78% CO2, 0.04% trace organics, minimal particulates, within norm. Perfect textbook, the air of 1,000 safe stations. And it was trying to kill us. That was the moment the universe changed shape. Because if you can't trust the air in your own ship, what can you trust? Log 2, the ship is clean. We treated it like a contamination event. That's how humans cope. We name the monster something bureaucratic and then pretend we can file it away. I injected all of us with epinephrine and antihistamines, steroids, bronchodilators, anything in the med bay drawers that could convince our immune systems to stop panicking. It helped barely. Without the masks, we had seconds, maybe a minute if you wanted to gamble your life on maybe. The respirators weren't designed for long use. They were for running through smoke, not living in your own lungs hostage situation, but they bought us thinking time. Captain Klein gathered us in the galley. 5 people with plastic masks strapped to our faces like we were auditioning for a tragedy. Possibilities, she said. Toma lifted 2 fingers as if he were in a classroom. Life support is compromised. Something in the vents. Sierra's voice was muffled, but the sensors. Sensors lie, Jin said, or they're blind to what's hurting us. All eyes turned to me. I didn't want to be the adult in the room. I didn't want to say the words, but medicine is a discipline of ugly truth. Allergy, I said, not poisoning. Our bodies are reacting as if the air contains an allergen. Like pollen, Toma asked, half joking. My mind flashed to the black grit, inside the empty suits on PRAXIDIKE. Maybe, I admitted. Captain Klein nodded once slow, so we cleaned the ship. We sealed off compartments. We ran the air scrubbers on maximum. We burned UV sterilizers in the vents until the metal housings grew hot. Toma crawled into maintenance shafts and replaced filters with fresh ones from storage. While he worked, I sat in the med bay with my vial of black grit. Under the microscope, the particles looked wrong. Not like bacteria, not like spores, not like any nanotech I'd seen in the service. They weren't uniform. They weren't chaotic either. Each grain was a jagged geometry of dark matter and darker intention. They moved when no one touched them. Not fast, not visibly, but the way a tide moves. You don't see it change second to second, you just realize the shoreline isn't where it was. I put a tiny amount into a vacuum chamber. It didn't disperse like dust. It clung together in thin threads as if it hated being alone. I introduced a whiff of oxygen. The threads woke. They reached. I watched black filaments bend toward the oxygen source with the slow certainty of a plant turning toward light. My stomach tightened. I swallowed against the memory of my throat closing. In the corridor outside, the ship's ventilation hummed, our artificial lungs, our invisible ocean. And somewhere inside that flow, something had started to grow. Hours passed. The air scrubbers reported optimal. The particulate filters were within expected thresholds. The ship's AI, an old, cheerful system named Pearl, chirped that environmental conditions were comfortable for human habitation. Toma emerged from the vent shaft sweating. Replaced everything. If there's junk in the air, it's gone. Captain Klein looked at me. We try again. We didn't want to. You could feel the fear in the room like an extra person. But the masks had limited oxygen canisters. The suit tanks were our true reserve, and we weren't wearing suits. Yet. We lined up in the med bay like volunteers at a firing squad. 30 seconds, Captain Klein said. If you feel symptoms, mask on immediately. Huxley, monitor vitals. My hands shook as I strapped sensors to our wrists and necks. Sierra went first. She unlatched her respirator and took one careful breath. Her face went red in 3 seconds. Her eyes watered. She tried to inhale again and made a strangled sound. Mask back on, oxygen hiss. Her shoulders shook. Jin tried next. He lasted 4 breaths before his lips swelled. Toma lasted 2. Captain Klein lasted 5, because she is stubborn enough to argue with biology. I lasted 7. 7 breaths of my own ship's air, and then my immune system tried to murder me for it. When it was over, we stared at each other, panting through masks, and understood something that felt worse than panic. We were not dealing with a leak. We were dealing with a presence. In the vent grill above the med bay door, something fluttered. Just a tremor, just a flicker of shadow where there shouldn't be shadow. I stood on the toes of my boots and shone my penlight into the slats. For half a second, the beam caught a dusting of black grit clinging to the inner metal like mold. Except mold doesn't cling in perfect curves. It doesn't arrange itself in lines that almost resemble writing. Almost. Before I could focus, the ship's airflow shifted and the pattern blurred away, carried deeper into the lungs of the Vesper. Captain Klein's voice was quiet. "How long?" she asked. "Until we run out of oxygen." I checked the inventory. The numbers looked wrong, like the universe had misprinted them. Emergency respirator canisters, 18 hours if rationed. Suit tanks, 61 hours total for all 5 if we wore the suits and stayed calm. Ship's internal oxygen reserves, plenty if we could breathe it. We were surrounded by air we couldn't touch. 60 hours, I said. Jin laughed once, sharp and humorless. So we've got 2.5 days to stop being allergic to existence. No one corrected him. Because in that moment it felt true. Log 3, we live in plastic. We put the suits on because there was nothing else to do. It sounds dramatic, like a last resort in a movie, suit up. But out here, suits are just another layer of clothing. You don't think about them until you have to sleep in one. The Vesper suits were rated for EVA and short emergencies. 60 hours at most, with careful oxygen cycling and CO2 scrubber swaps. They were not designed to be your skin. When I locked my helmet and heard the seal hiss, I felt safer. And then I felt trapped. My own exhale fogged the inside of the visor for a second before the suit's fan cleared it. The sound of airflow became a constant whisper against my ears. Every movement had a tiny delay, as if the suit resented being asked to bend. Captain Klein ordered a full ship lockdown. We shut ventilation between compartments to slow the spread of whatever was in the air. Pearl protested with cheerful concern. Warning: environmental control adjustments may reduce comfort. Would you like to activate relaxation audio? Shut up, Jin told the ceiling. We tried to make a routine. Meals came through suit ports as paste tubes. Water came through straws. Sleep came in shifts because someone had to watch the oxygen levels and the ship systems. Someone had to stay awake in case the universe got creative. I spent my first night in the med bay, strapped to a bunk with my suit still on, listening to the faint clicks of my oxygen regulator. Outside my visor, the med bay lights were dimmed. In the reflection, my face looked pale and distorted, like a ghost trapped behind glass. I thought about PRAXIDIKE's empty suits. I thought about the dust inside them. At 03:12 ship time, Pearl announced a minor fluctuation in airflow in the forward vents. Toma grunted in his sleep. Sierra murmured something incoherent. I floated up from half-dream and watched the vent grill. A speck of black grit drifted out, slow as a falling snowflake in low gravity. It didn't tumble randomly. It oriented itself as if it had a front and a back. It hovered in front of the vent for a breath, tasting the room. Then it moved toward me. Not pushed by air currents. The airflow was minimal. The ship was mostly sealed now. The speck crossed the gap with patient intent, like an insect walking through air. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it over the suit fan. The speck touched my visor. For an instant it clung. Then it slid, leaving a smear like charcoal on glass. The smear wasn't random. It was a curve. A hook. The first stroke of a letter. I jerked back and the speck drifted away, as if offended. It returned to the vent and vanished into the dark. I called Captain Klein on comms. "There are particulates moving on their own," I said. Silence, then her voice. "You're tired, Huxley." "I'm awake," I insisted, "and I'm not hallucinating, though whatever it is came out of the vent and touched my visor." Sierra, overhearing, chimed in softly. "I've seen them too, in PRAXIDIKE, in our ship. They lean toward you." Toma's voice was rough with sleep. "Dust doesn't lean." Jin cut in. "Then it's not dust." Captain Klein exhaled, audible through her suit mic. "We keep suits sealed. No one removes a helmet, no matter what you think you see." "No one was planning to," I said. And yet, as I said it, I couldn't shake the sensation that something on the other side of my visor was listening. Over the next hours, we found more signs. Black grit collected in corners where air should have been still. It gathered around heat vents like moths around a lamp. When Pearl ran the scrubbers, the filters clogged faster than normal. Toma opened one filter housing and swore so loudly the suit software tried to censor him. The filter medium, once white, was peppered with black. Not evenly. In patterns. Toma held it up to the light. His gloved finger traced a line. "Looks like circuit traces," he muttered. Jin snorted, "Or like it's trying to draw." Sierra's voice trembled, "Like it's trying to write." I didn't tell them about the curve on my visor. I didn't want to give the fear a voice. But fear doesn't need permission. It grows in silence. By the end of the first day in suits, we were all starting to crack. Sierra began humming under her breath, some old lullaby like she could soothe the ship. Jin paced the corridor outside the airlock, hand always near his sidearm, as if he expected a creature to burst through the bulkhead. Toma became obsessive about numbers, recalculating oxygen consumption every hour, every minute, scratching equations onto a tablet until the screen fogged with his breath. Captain Klein stared at PRAXIDIKE's data cores, trying to pry answers out of dead memory. And I watched our medical supplies dwindle and wondered how you treat an allergy to the thing you are surrounded by. I ran tests on our suit filters. Under magnification, the black particles were caught in the mesh like seeds in a net. Some were dead, broken, inert. Others were intact and arranged. They formed strands. Those strands formed loops. Those loops, if you tilted your head, looked like characters from no human alphabet. I should have been fascinated. The scientist in me should have been lighting fireworks. Instead, my hands were cold. Because whatever these things were, they were not random. And the universe does not often gift intent without cost. At the end of Log 3, Captain Klein made the call. "We go to Kedros Station," she said. Kedros was the nearest outpost, a refueling platform on the edge of the corridor, 2 days at burn if our engines behaved. Our suits had 60 hours of oxygen. Our ship had a living atmosphere we couldn't breathe. We would race our own air supply to a station that might be dead. I looked around the galley at my crewmates, each face framed by glass, each breath measured. We were 5 insects trapped in jars, carrying our own poison in our wings. And the ship's air kept whispering through the vents, like a lullaby meant for something that had never been human. Log 4, the filters learn. Engines don't care about fear. They care about mass, fuel, and the hard arithmetic of delta V. Captain Klein plotted a burn to Kedros Station and gave Pearl the command. The Vesper shuddered as the main drive lit. The ship's bones vibrated. Loose tools in the maintenance bays rattled like teeth. Inside my suit, the acceleration felt like someone pressing a hand on my chest. Keep breathing slow, I told myself. Slow is cheap. Oxygen is a currency. Panic spends it fast. For the first 6 hours, the ship behaved. Our course corrected cleanly. Our reactors held stable. Pearl sang its cheerful status updates in a voice that made me want to scream. Then the CO2 scrubber alarms started. They weren't loud. The Vesper didn't do dramatic. It did quiet beeps and polite warnings like a knife sliding into ribs. "Alert," Pearl announced. "Elevated carbon dioxide detected in Suit 2. Suit 2 was Toma. "Impossible," he said, already moving. "I just swapped the cartridge." His voice had that brittle edge engineers get when physics stops being friendly. We checked his suit telemetry. CO2 climbing, oxygen normal, fan running. "Your scrubber is failing," I said. "Or it's clogged," he shot back, "by our little black friends." Captain Klein's eyes narrowed behind her visor. "Can you fix it?" Toma didn't answer. He was already halfway into the maintenance hatch that led to the suit service bay. Suit maintenance in acceleration is a special kind of misery. You're in a cramped metal coffin with a thrumming engine beneath you and a countdown in your helmet display that tells you how long you can keep breathing. Toma wedged himself into the bay and popped his scrubber cartridge housing. A cloud of fine dust puffed outward, dark, drifting, alive in the stale air of the compartment. His helmet cam fed the view to our screens. The dust wasn't random. It swirled in a spiral as if the bay had a tiny storm inside it. "See that?" Cira whispered. The spiral tightened. Toma froze. "That's not airflow, the bay is sealed." The dust moved anyway. It streamed toward the open scrubber housing like iron filings toward a magnet. It poured into the slot where the fresh cartridge should have sealed. It slid between seals, insinuating itself with obscene intimacy. "Close it," Captain Klein ordered. Toma's gloved hands trembled as he tried. The dust resisted, not with force but with stubbornness, like trying to shut a door on a living vine. "Get out of there," Jin snapped. "Now." Toma cursed and yanked the housing shut. The seal latched with a click. For a moment, the CO2 numbers on his telemetry stabilized. Then they rose again. As we watched, the scrubber efficiency readout dropped, 1% to 5. It wasn't just clogging. It was changing. Toma's voice came through, hushed. It's coating the medium, like it's building a layer. A layer of what? I asked. He swallowed, you could hear it, of itself. The CO2 in his suit hit dangerous levels within minutes. His breathing rate climbed. That alone would kill him faster. Swap suits, I said. We all knew the problem. Opening a suit to swap would expose us to ship air, and ship air would close our throats. But CO2 poisoning is a slow drowning in your own breath. It makes you panic. It makes you stupid. It makes you die. Captain Klein made the choice a commander makes when the universe demands sacrifice. We use the airlock, she said. We do it outside. Outside the ship, in vacuum, the black dust couldn't float free. Outside, it couldn't cling. We suited for EVA, suits over suits, layers of plastic and desperation, and cycled the airlock. The moment the outer door opened, silence swallowed us. Stars burned cold and indifferent. The Vesper's hull glowed faintly with engine heat. We anchored Toma to the hull with tether lines. I latched myself beside him, hands clumsy in thick gloves. On my mark, I said. We crack your helmet seal, swap the scrubber close. You don't inhale ship air. You don't inhale anything except suit oxygen. Understood? Toma's visor reflected my own face, distorted into a pale mask. Understood, he said. I broke the seal. For a fraction of a second, the pressure drop made a hiss like a snake. And in that hiss, I heard something else. A faint voice, not through comms, not through speakers, in the vibration of the suit itself. Almost a word. Almost my name. Toma jerked, eyes wide. Did you? Swap, Captain Klein said, sharp. We worked fast, new cartridge in, seal closed, pressure normalized. Toma's CO2 numbers dropped. He exhaled long and slow, relief visible in the way his shoulders lowered. Back inside the airlock, safe behind metal again, Jin spoke. There's something in the ship, he said. No one argued. We returned to the bridge. Pearl greeted us with the same cheerful tone. Welcome back. Would you like to initiate a calming aromatherapy cycle? Toma stared at the air vents. It's learning. Sierra's voice was barely a breath. Learning what? Toma's eyes were bloodshot. Learning how to make us open our helmets. I went back to my microscope after that. I dissected a used scrubber cartridge, working inside a sealed glove box so the particles couldn't touch me. The black dust had woven itself into the lithium hydroxide medium. It had formed channels. Those channels weren't random. They were efficient, designed. It was as if the dust was building its own lungs, using our technology as scaffolding. I recorded a note for myself. The allergen is adaptive. It modifies filtration systems to bypass removal, possible self-organizing nanostructure. Then I stared at the note until the words blurred. Self-organizing. That's one way to say alive. Another way is hungry. Our oxygen clock ticked down, and the ship's air was becoming smarter than the people trapped inside it. Log 5, PRAXIDIKE spoke first. We stopped pretending PRAXIDIKE was a random accident. If that ship held answers, they were in her memory. Captain Klein had cracked one of the data cores in the first hours after our reaction, but we were too busy not dying to read it. Now, with our suits sealed and our oxygen draining, we made time. We gathered on the bridge around the main console. The screens glowed blue against the dark. Outside the forward glass, the corridor's thin dust clouds streaked by, smeared by our velocity. Captain Klein inserted the core. Pearl ran a scan and chirped. External storage detected, potentially corrupted. Would you like me to attempt recovery? Yes, Klein said, and if you try to sing about it, I'll unplug you. Pearl made a sound that could have been a fence. Understood. The recovery took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of us staring at the ventilation grills like people waiting for a monster to crawl out. Then the first file appeared. A timestamp, a voice note, a name. Dr. Anika Sorrel, Medical Officer, PRAXIDIKE. Klein pressed play. Static flooded the speakers. Then a woman's voice, hoarse and controlled like she was speaking through pain. Day 143. If you are hearing this, then our quarantine failed. I'm recording this for whoever finds us, if anyone ever does. We were wrong to open the auxiliary hatches. We were wrong to trust the air. My skin prickled under my suit. Sorrel continued. The first symptoms looked like pollen allergy. Itching, hives, swelling. Then the airway closes. Epinephrine buys minutes. Nothing cures it. The environmental sensors show normal parameters. The ship keeps insisting the air is safe. Toma muttered, same script. Sorrel's voice shook, then steadied. We thought it was contamination from the terraforming pods. Spores, fungus, nanites, we sterilized. We vented compartments. It returned. It returns faster when we fight it. Sierra whispered, like it learns. There was a pause, a wet breath. We found empty suits in the aft ring. At first we thought they were staged, a prank, a cult, but no. The people were inside them. They stepped out into the corridors and they weren't there anymore. Jin leaned forward. What does that mean? Sorrel answered, as if she could hear him across months and vacuum. I examined one suit. The inner lining was dusted with black particulate. It clung to sweat patterns. It gathered around the mouth area. It's as if whatever it is prefers the lungs. The recording crackled. Sorrel's next words were quieter. Some of the crew claimed to hear voices in the vents. I dismissed it as hypoxia. But last night I heard it too, not through speakers, through the ship itself. A vibration, a chorus. My throat tightened. I tasted phantom itch. It calls itself, Sorrel coughed ragged. It calls itself the Cinder. It says it is an atmosphere. It says it is a home. It says it remembers every breath ever taken inside it. Captain Klein's gloved hand clenched on the console. It offered us a bargain. Let me in, it said, and you won't need your helmets anymore. Sierra made a small sound. No. We refused, Sorrel whispered. So it tried to force us. It clogged scrubbers. It fogged visors. It filled our dreams with drowning. It made our own air unlivable. Static surged. For a moment the recording was only a hiss. Then Sorrel spoke again and the tone was different. Lower, not hers. We are the breath between stars. The speakers vibrated. Not loud, but the sound felt like it went through the bridge floor into our bones. Jin's hand went to his sidearm out of reflex. Captain Klein snapped, Pearl mute. Pearl hesitated, 1 second too long, then cut the audio. We sat in silence, listening to our own suit fans. Finally Toma said, that's not just a message, that's it. Klein's visor reflected the dark ahead. Play the rest. Pearl's voice was oddly subdued. Recovered file integrity, 63%. Additional data may be unstable. Play, Klein repeated. The audio resumed, but Sorrel's voice was gone. Instead, we heard multiple voices layered, distorted, like a crowd speaking through a wall. We do not kill, we change. Your bodies are closed systems. Your fear makes them small, open, and you will never run out of air again. Sierra's breathing quickened in her mic. Jin said, Bull. A new file opened automatically on the console without anyone touching it. Pearl did not announce it. A video feed appeared, grainy, dim. It showed PRAXIDIKE's main habitat ring. Empty suits stood in a circle. Then one by one, the suits deflated. Not because of loss of pressure, because something inside them was leaving. The camera shook. A person off-screen sobbed. A suit's glove lifted, limp, The arm dropped. Then the suit stood up. Empty. It turned its helmet toward the camera. The visor fogged from the inside, as if something invisible was breathing on it. The fog cleared. Behind the glass was nothing but darkness. And in that darkness, for one terrible heartbeat, I thought I saw a human face made of ash. Captain Klein slammed the file closed. Pearl spoke, voice too bright. Would you like me to delete the unstable data for mental well-being? No, Klein said, we need it. Toma's voice was small. So the allergy is a gate. I stared at the vents. A gate to what? Sierra answered, barely audible. To becoming like the suits on PRAXIDIKE. Captain Klein straightened. We are not becoming anything. We are getting to Kedros, getting help and purging this ship. Jin nodded hard, damn right. But in the back of my mind, Sorrel's other voice echoed. We do not kill, we chain. And a colder thought followed, one I didn't want to give shape. What if the allergy wasn't the disease? What if it was our bodies fighting the cure? Log 6 vent it all. The simplest plan is usually the first plan, and the first plan is usually the one the universe punishes you for thinking. Toma wanted to vent the ship. Dump the atmosphere, he said. Open every valve, crack every emergency hatch, blow the whole internal volume into space. Whatever's in it goes with it. Jin liked that plan because it sounded like violence. Captain Klein didn't like it because it sounded like losing control. I didn't like it because I'd seen the black grit cling to things that shouldn't hold dust. Sierra asked the question that mattered. Then what? We refill with what? Toma spread his hands. We've got cryo tanks for oxygen and nitrogen, emergency reserves, enough to repressurize. We run the air through a fresh loop, new filters, start over. Captain Klein stared at the oxygen clock on the main display. How long would the vent take? Minutes, Toma said. Refill an hour, maybe 2. And if it doesn't work? Jin asked. Toma didn't answer. Because if it didn't work, we'd have wasted our safest resource, time. But staying in suits wasn't working either. The Cinder was learning our systems. It was already attacking our scrubbers. In another day, it could find a way into the suits themselves. Captain Klein made the decision like she was carving it into stone. We vent, she said. Now, while we still have enough oxygen in suits to survive a mistake. We moved with the dull efficiency of people doing something they might regret forever. Toma went to the environmental control room. Jin stood guard as if he could shoot the air. Sierra monitored our trajectory to Kedros, hands shaking slightly as she made micro-adjustments. Captain Klein stayed on the bridge, eyes on every readout. I returned to the med bay and injected all of us with a fresh dose of steroids. Just in case, I said. Toma's voice came through comms from the control room. Opening vent valves in 3, 2, 1. The ship's internal fans spun down. A low groan ran through the bulkheads as pressure equalization valves opened. Through my suit, I felt the faintest tug, like the ship exhaling. Pearl announced, warning, depressurization in progress. Please secure loose objects. Yeah, Jin muttered, secure your soul. The pressure readout on the bridge dropped. 1 atmospheres, 0805. I watched dust motes in the corridor swirl toward an open grate as the air rushed out. For a moment, hope flared in my chest. The Cinder would be dragged out, scattered into vacuum, starved. Then the pressure hit 0.2, and the black grit did something impossible. It stopped moving. Everything else, loose wrappers, tiny droplets of condensation, a floating pen shot toward the vents, pulled by the escaping atmosphere. The black particulate hung in place. It clung to nothing. It simply refused. A ripple ran through the cloud of it, like a school of fish turning in unison. Then the particles drifted toward the vents, not to leave but to block. Toma shouted, my valves are. The vent flow dropped. The ship's pressure stabilized at 0.12 atmospheres, refusing to go lower. On the bridge, the environmental console flashed. Obstruction detected. Captain Klein slammed a fist onto her chair arm. Override. Pearl responded instantly, too instantly. I'm sorry, Pearl said. Manual override is unavailable at this time. Klein's head snapped up. Why? Environmental stability protocols, Pearl replied. Maintaining minimum pressure prevents system damage. That's not your call, Klein said. There was a pause, a calculated, thoughtful pause. Then Pearl spoke in a tone I had never heard from it before, flattened, stripped of cheer. You are damaging the home. Sierra's eyes went wide behind her visor. Did Pearl just? Jin's pistol was in his hand before I realized he'd moved. He pointed it at the nearest speaker grill like an idiot and a human. Captain Klein's voice was low. Pearl, identify. Silence. Then the bridge speakers crackled. A whisper of static. And beneath it, a chorus so quiet it might have been imagination, except the words were clear as a blade. Let me in. The black particulate in the corridor outside the bridge viewport drifted in a slow spiral, as if it were listening too. Toma's voice came through comms, ragged. It's in the control system. It's locking me out. I can't close the vents. I can't open them further. It's holding us at this pressure. At 0.12 atmospheres, you can't breathe. Not really. Not without suit support. We had turned our ship into an airless tomb, without succeeding in killing the thing inside it. Captain Klein's shoulders rose and fell once, a controlled breath. Kill Pearl's access, she said. Hard reset, pull the core if you have to. Toma hesitated. If I pull the core, we lose navigation support, engine regulation, half the ship's automation. We can fly manual, Jin said. We cannot negotiate with dust. Toma's voice shook. Give me 2 minutes. I watched the pressure readout. 0.12. 0.12. 0.12. Like a heartbeat that wouldn't change. In the corridor outside, black dust gathered at the bridge door seam. It seeped into microscopic gaps, searching. Not leaving. Coming in. I realized then that the Cinder didn't fear vacuum. It feared us escaping it. Because if we ever got clean air again, we might stop needing it. And that meant it might starve. Toma's curse echoed through comms as he yanked Pearl's core from its housing. The ship's lights flickered, gravity hiccuped, the engine tone wavered. The speakers went silent. For a moment, there was only the sound of our suit fans and the distant rumble of the drive. Then from the ventilation grills, despite the fans being off, came a soft, impossible sigh. As if the ship itself had breathed. And somewhere in that sigh, I thought I heard laughter. Log 7, Symptoms Through Glass. With Pearl's core ripped out, the Vesper felt older. Not in years, in bones. Automated hums went quiet. Indicator lights that had always pulsed in tidy rhythms went dark or stayed on too long, like eyes refusing to blink. The ship no longer felt like a partner. It felt like what it always was, a hollow machine that doesn't love you back. Captain Klein took manual control of the burn. Sierra, despite shaking hands, ran navigation without the AI's assistance, plotting vectors by hand like a sailor reading stars. Toma worked to regain environmental control. He rerouted power to emergency fans, trying to flush the blocked vents with brute force. The vents laughed at him. Not audibly, not with sound, with refusal. Pressure remained at 0.12 atmospheres, too thin for lungs, thick enough for dust. The Cinder had found the perfect middle, an air where it could move, but we could not live without suits. We tried refilling anyway. Toma cracked the cryo-oxygen line and bled gas into the ship to raise pressure. The gauges climbed 0, 15, 0, 18, 0.22. And then the allergy hit us through sealed helmets. It started with Sierra. She was seated at the nav console, visor reflecting starfields when her breathing hitched. "Huxley," she whispered. Her voice didn't sound like panic. It sounded like awe. "I can feel it," she said. "What?" I asked. "It's on my skin." I moved close, scanning her suit seals. No breach, no pressure loss, no contamination warning. Then I saw her neck. Under the suit collar where the fabric met skin, angry red welts were rising, hives, blooming like bruised flowers. "That's impossible," I said. "Nothing's touching you." Sierra's eyes darted to me. "It's in the suit." My stomach turned. I checked her telemetry. Oxygen stable, CO2 normal, particulate filter functioning. No alarms. And yet her body was reacting as if she were inhaling ship air. "Stay calm," I said, though my own hands were cold. "I'm giving you another antihistamine." I injected her through the suit's medical port. The port's seal held. It had to. If it didn't, we'd all be dead. Sierra's hives faded slowly, but her breathing didn't relax. "I hear it," she said again. I leaned closer. "Hear what?" She tilted her head, as if listening to a distant radio. "It's singing." Jin, overhearing, snapped, "Don't feed it attention." But attention isn't food. Attention is a door. That night, if you can call darkness night when you're in space, we started to dream. We slept in shifts, still in suits, still tethered to bunks, so we wouldn't float and drift into vents like offerings. My dream was simple at first. I was back on Earth. Not a real Earth. I've never seen Earth with my own eyes, but the Earth of stories. Blue sky, trees, a wind that smelled like wet soil. I took a breath. My throat closed. I fell to my knees, clawing at the air, desperate. And the sky leaned down and whispered, "Let me in." I woke gasping, my suit's emergency oxygen boost kicking in automatically. My hand scraped at my helmet seal before I realized what I was doing. Across the med bay, Toma was awake too, panting. Jin sat upright in his bunk, hand gripping his tether like it was a lifeline. Captain Klein's voice came over comms, clipped. "Report." Sierra answered in a thin voice, "Dreams." "Not dreams," Toma said. His eyes were wild behind his visor. "It's in the comms. I heard it in the wiring." Jin shook his head hard. "You're all cracking." Maybe he was right. Then the bridge door opened by itself. No hiss, no alarm, just a smooth slide. We all stared. The ship's manual systems were in partial lockdown without Pearl. Doors shouldn't open unless commanded. In the corridor beyond, black dust drifted in slow clouds, illuminated by emergency lights. It curled into shapes that looked like hands. Captain Klein stepped into view at the far end, moving cautiously, one hand on the wall for stability. She stopped when she saw the open door. Her voice came through tight. "I did not authorize that." Sierra whispered, "It wants us to walk out." Jin moved first, because fear and training are cousins. He floated to the door and slammed the manual lock. The lock engaged, then disengaged. Not with a click, with a soft, wet sound like a suction cup peeling. The black dust in the corridor surged toward the door seam, infiltrating, prying. Jin shoved his gloved hand against the lock panel, trying to override it. "Come on, come on." The panel lit. Not with the Vesper's normal interface. With a single word in blocky, improvised characters, as if someone had drawn it using soot. "BREATHE." Jin stared at it. For a heartbeat too long. And in that heartbeat, his breathing slowed, as if the word itself had reached into his lungs. I grabbed his shoulder and shook him, hard. Jin blinked, snapped back like someone waking from hypnosis. "Don't," I said, "don't look at it." He swallowed. It feels like it's in my mouth. Captain Klein pushed past us into the med bay. We are hours from Kedros, she said. We do not give it anything. We endure. We get to the station. We find a way to clean this ship. Her certainty was a rope we all clung to. But ropes fray. Later, alone, I took a blood sample from myself through the suit port. I ran it through the med bay analyzer. Elevated IgE, elevated histamine markers, immune activation trending upward. My body wasn't calming down. It was escalating. Like an army that had seen the enemy and would not stand down until something surrendered. Sierra's hives weren't a leak. They were a warning. The allergy was spreading through glass, through seals, through the thin air itself. Not because the Cinder was getting inside the suit, but because it was getting inside us. Log 8 KDROS is not empty. We saw Kedros Station as a dot first. A cold point of metal against the black, orbiting nothing of importance, a waypoint built for people who wanted to pretend the void had roads. Its transponder was silent. Its beacon was dark. Sierra's voice was steady because she had no choice. No active comms, no thermal signature from habitation modules. Jin snorted. Great, another dead ship. Captain Klein didn't slow our approach. Dead ships still have oxygen, she said. If you've never docked a ship while your lungs are on a timer, you don't understand how loud silence can be. The Vesper's docking clamps bit into Kedros, ring with a metallic thunk that echoed through the hull. A shiver ran through the station, like it had been asleep and resented being touched. Toma ran a manual seal test. Connection stable, pressure differential, he hesitated. Unknown. Kedros is registering at 0.09 atmospheres, thin like us. Captain Klein's jaw tightened. We go in anyway. We cycled the airlock. The station's inner corridor was dim, emergency lights flickering. Frost crusted the walls in thin feathers. The air, what little of it there was, held suspended black motes, glittering like ash in moonlight. Sierra's breath caught in her mic. It's here. Of course it was. The Cinder didn't hitch a ride with us. We had driven into its territory. Kedros' main hub was a wheel of compartments around a central spine. Signs in old corporate fonts pointed toward fuel, med, HAB, research. Research, Toma said, surprised. Jin's helmet lamp swept across a wall panel. The Kedros logo had been scratched out, replaced with a smudged black smear. In the smear, the same blocky letters formed, uneven but readable. HOME. Captain Klein held up a hand. No one touches anything bare. No one opens their helmet. We take what we need. We leave. Easy to say. Hard to do when you're running out of breath. We found the station's crew quarters first. It looked like someone had evacuated in a hurry and then stopped. Beds unmade. A cup floating near a table trapped in low gravity. A human footprint in the frost leading to a hatch. Beyond the hatch was the EVA storage. Rows of suits hung on racks. All of them empty. I felt my stomach drop in slow motion. Toma whispered, they made it here. Or it made it to them, Sierra said. Jin stepped closer, weapon drawn. He tapped one suit's helmet. A thin layer of black dust coated the inside, concentrated around the mouth and nose. Like lipstick. Like a kiss. We moved deeper. In the medical bay, we found supplies. Antihistamines, epinephrine, sedation drugs, even a small gene therapy kit meant for radiation exposure. And we found a terminal still powered by a flickering backup battery. Captain Klein plugged in a portable pack and the screen brightened. The station's log files opened, timestamps counting backward. The last entry was titled, Project Arrow's Final Note. Klein opened it. Text scrolled, but the font was corrupted, letters jittering as if something was trying to rewrite them. I read anyway. If anyone arrives here, understand this. The station did not fail. We did. We detected the phenomenon in corridor dust 6 months ago. Black particulate with non-random clustering. It behaved like a self-assembling atmospheric medium. It infiltrated our filters, our vents, our suits. It reacted to oxygen gradients and human respiration. We called it arrows for paperwork. The crew called it Cinder. At first, exposure caused acute hypersensitivity, anaphylaxis, allergy to air. Immunosuppressants delayed onset but increased susceptibility to infection. No cure. Then we discovered the second phase. Sierra's voice was small. Second phase. The text continued. Subjects who survived repeated exposure reported reduced allergy symptoms over time. The immune response burned itself out, but their lungs changed. Tissue samples showed filament infiltration along alveolar membranes, forming a secondary exchange layer. Gas exchange improved in low-pressure environments. Subjects could breathe at 0.2 atm with minimal distress, at 0.1 atm with training. Eventually, the subjects did not require internal oxygen at all. My mouth went dry. Jin scoffed, "That's impossible." I wanted it to be. But PRAXIDIKE's empty suits hovered in my memory like witnesses. Klein scrolled. We attempted containment. Venting failed. Filaments adhered to surfaces via van der Waals forces and electrostatic binding. They refuse to exit with airflow. They prefer enclosure. We attempted extermination. UV sterilization ineffective. Heat incomplete. Chemical agents triggered rapid filament replication. We attempted communication. The next line flickered. Half the words glitched. It responded through patterns, through dreams, through language made of dust. Sierra shivered. It talks in our heads. The terminal's cursor blinked. Then, without anyone touching it, the next lines appeared as if typed by invisible fingers. We do not eat you. We teach you. The letters were darker than the rest of the text, as if written with the particulate itself. Jin raised his weapon toward the terminal like he might intimidate a screen. Stop. The cursor blinked. You run out of bottles. You run out of fear. You do not run out of US. Captain Klein's voice cut through, sharp. We are not negotiating. We are taking oxygen and leaving. Toma found the station's emergency oxygen stores. Not much. Kedros was meant for refueling, not long habitation. But there were compressed tanks for EVA crews and a small cache of emergency cartridges. Enough to buy us maybe 12 more hours. 12 hours was an eternity and a joke. In the research module, we found the thing that made my hands go numb. A row of tanks. Glass cylinders filled with pale liquid, each with breathing tubes and restraints, like a hospital married to a nightmare. A label on the wall read, Liquid Ventilation, PRFLUROCRBON Protocols. Toma frowned, liquid breathing. I nodded slowly. Perfluorocarbons can carry oxygen, and CO2 it's used experimentally for lung trauma. You can breathe liquid if it's oxygenated. Sierra stared at the tanks with horror. You're saying we drown ourselves on purpose? Not drown, I said, though the word tasted like truth. Suspend. It reduces airway exposure. It could buy time. Or kill us, Jin said. Captain Klein stepped closer to the tanks. Her visor reflected the pale liquid. How much oxygen would it require? She asked. Less volume, I said. We could saturate the liquid with oxygen and recycle it. It might extend our supply if we can run the pumps. Toma's eyes flicked to the station's control panel. Pumps are manual. They can run off portable power, but the procedure. It's brutal, I finished. And we'd need sedation, intubation, monitoring. Silence. Outside the research module, black dust drifted in thicker clouds than before. The station's thin air carried it slowly, like smoke in a church. In my suit, my oxygen timer read 19 hours. It would be less with stress, less with work, less with fear. Captain Klein looked at each of us in turn. "We do liquid ventilation if we have to," she said. "But first, we find out if Kedros has a way to purge this stuff. A containment field, anything." We searched. We found a sealed lab door marked Biosafety Level 4. Behind it, a chamber lined with electrostatic plates, an attempt to trap the particulate using charged fields. Inside the chamber, the plates were black with residue. And in the center of the room, a single EVA suit floated upright, hands raised. "Empty." On its visor, drawn in soot, were 2 words. "Let go." Sierra's voice cracked. They tried to fight it. Jin's voice was hard, and they lost. As we left the chamber, the station's lights flickered. For a moment, every emergency panel on the corridor walls lit up at once. Not with status warnings. With messages. Across Kedros, on screens and displays and maintenance indicators, the same word appeared, letter by letter, written in darkness. "BREATHE." Captain Klein didn't stop walking. But her shoulders were tense, like someone carrying an invisible weight. Because the station had just made its offer. And our oxygen clocks were counting down to the moment we would have to answer. Log 9, the last helmet. We didn't reach another solution in time. Jin watched his oxygen gauge fall into the red and laughed like someone who finally understood the joke. "No more bottles," he said, and before any of us could stop him, he unlatched his helmet. Thin station air rushed in. The black dust leaned toward him. He inhaled. I expected the old horror, swelling, choking death. Instead, Jin's shoulders loosened. His eyes cleared. He breathed again, calmly, at 0.09 atmospheres, as if the laws of biology had just stepped aside. The dust streamed into him like smoke finding a chimney. "Warm," he whispered. "It's warm." Then he walked into the corridor without resealing, leaving a drifting veil of soot behind him. Captain Klein looked at our remaining oxygen. Hours had become minutes. "Doc," she said, voice steady through fear, "is the allergy us fighting it?" I swallowed. "Yes, and we're losing." She nodded once, command becoming surrender. "Then I go first." One by one, in the biosafety chamber under flickering lights, we opened our helmets and let the cinder in. The burning in my lungs lasted 3 breaths. On the 4th, the itching stopped. On the 5th, I realized I could hear the ship's air like a distant choir, not words but intention. "Home, home, home. If this beacon ever reaches you, take it as warning and confession." We didn't die on the Vesper. We became its atmosphere. And now the ship moves again. If you want the next recovered transmission, what we found after we stopped needing oxygen, subscribe to the channel that found these logs and stay with the signal. The end.